Music, as we all know, doesn't limit itself to the sole purpose of entertainment. It has started revolutions, has fueled freedom struggles, and proved as a catalyst for self awareness amongst the humankind. Today on Talk Studio, I'll be interviewing one such revolutionary musician who has dedicated her life in transcending religious and cultural borders through her music and has been actively involved in the archival of ancient Indian folk forms and making them become a part of the mainstream. When asked, this artist said that she doesn't like to be called as an activist because, according to her, music in its own sense is activism. Let's call upon Shilpa Mudbi Kothakota, an ardent worshipper of folk music, a performer, and last but not the least, an activist. Can you come on my show, Shilpa? Can you join me?
Hi,
Hello.
Devdutta.
Hi, Shilpa. Very nice to have you on my show, and thank you so much for doing this. And it really means a lot to have you here. Can you
I'm,
hear me?
I'm glad. I can hear you. You can hear me, no?
Yeah, yeah. So superb. So Shilpa, like I've told you, the format of my show, I've been doing this show for quite some time. I have inviting a lot of musical artists on my show and trying to have a conversation with them. Related to their lives, related to the kind of journeys they have gone through, and in a true sense, you have been one of the most unique artists today that I have got on my show, and I'm really
That's so
uh,
flattering.
happy and excited to do this with you. So yeah, let's start with my first question to you. So there is a custom on this show which I have developed where I generally start with that one question which I have the most intrigue and curiosity for. The
Okay.
question is, why music? Why and when did you feel like choosing music as a primary medium of your expression?
Okay. Um, it's fairly a long-winded question. So let me begin by saying music is something that was always encouraged in my family because my grandfather played the shehnai and played the haligi, which is like, like the
Yeah,
duff with the sticks. So
yeah.
he played the haligi, and my grandmother, she sang many songs from when I've known her. She has been singing because this happens when you are a person who works in the field and you've been an agrarian laborer. You have these songs in your body. Like even my grandmother says, "Ee haad nan maiya gawa." Like these songs are in her body because there's that much of memory in it. So I think singing came easy to us because there was music in the house. And when we went back to our village or when we went back to our towns, we saw that there was a lot more music there in their lives. And for us, it was a very sectioned approach. Like you're in the choir, so you sing. You don't cut vegetables and you sing, but you know. So I think music was in both directions. Being in a convent school, I joined the school choir. So it helped kind of understand um, the spiritual aspect of music as well, because we sang a lot of it in the chapel, and I still have a very strong connection to my school chapel. I don't know why, but I do. Maybe because of the acoustics, I feel sometimes. but,
Yeah.
uh, but I think for me, as a career, I did not pick music for a long time. I decided to be a filmmaker because it was easier for me to take a step back and say I want to record reality rather than create fiction. So after making that choice, it was interesting to know that you and your voice kind of goes disappearing. Like you want to become more and more a fly on the wall. So all my music was what I was listening to. So a lot of music that I listen to is all over the place. Like I listen to Mongolian music, I listen to jazz, I listen to a lot of rock, and then I listen to a lot of Carnatic music, English classical music. So it's a ton of hodgepodge. Like depending on which day, what I feel like, I listen to a ton of stuff. So when I was a filmmaker, I think that was also interesting because your ears become sharper. You listen more. You listen more to people. You listen more to the timbre of their voice because you're setting your mics and you know how many decibels. So I think your hearing becomes sharper and you tend to speak lesser. Like you let the story flow, right? You take time. You're not trying to say when am I going to get this perfection, but you feel like every shot is a perfection and it's just happening. You just have to be there and be patient. So I think I picked music after this whole documentary filmmaking journey of mine, and I moved towards documenting culture and theater. And that's when I think I started moving back to understanding that there's so much music that we were recording, or so much music that was going into theater, which did not resonate so much with me or my ancestry, or where, or it didn't come close to understanding what that agrarian voice was. My grandmother's voice started becoming an alien voice, you know. So I think it was important for me to use music to go back to my roots, to simply put it. You know, it was impossible to make this just a documentary journey. It was about going back and kind of reintroducing these songs into my head and my mouth and my body. So I think music made sense to go back to put it simply.
So where does filmmaking stand today? Are you still making films, or you have dedicated your life completely to, making music?
I don't know. I don't think I can ever give up filmmaking, because I can see that in the field, a lot of it can't be documented.
Yes.
But a lot of it needs to be documented. Like there are some things that are on the last leg when you know you're at this yatra or this jatre, and you know it's probably the last one happening. And that's when you know your filmmaker has to come out, because you don't have the privilege to just watch this for yourself. You know, this is the last time you're watching it and many others are watching it. Then it's your responsibility to kind of record it. But many a times, I think in the field, there is too much of this power of the camera, which takes away from the conversation. When I place the camera in front of you, you're speaking more to the camera than me. And your relationship, you're growing more with the camera than me. So I think it became important to look at the camera as a power structure that was kind of coming in between two people's conversations. And I got rid of it for some time. And right now I'm thinking, I want to keep it that way. And I'm in this quest, at least now for the next few years to come, to find teachers who are willing to listen and who are willing to understand my shortcomings and teach me. You know, I'm in the process of learning. So I don't know if I'll go back to film making as yet, but it's not gone. I mean, it's a skill that I have learned, and I would like to keep it for reasons, for the reasons of folk material itself. It's very important to have that skill. So yeah.
So it is so interesting to hear this from someone who comes so rooted from the folklore. Something, the form of music which is passed away. Passed away is the wrong word. Passed on to through generations. So let's come to one of the most important persons in your life. That is your Ajji. I have seen your videos. I have been researching you, and there is a lot of influence which you have been deriving and drawing from your Ajji. She has passed on a few masterpieces to you. So can you tell us about this Ajji of yours?
Well, my grandmom this is my father's mother. And my father's mother comes from Bidar, which is the last district. It's almost literally, into Maharashtra. So she comes from a border town called Raipalli, not even Mudbi. Mudbi is the town she got married into. So Raipalli, even now, if you go to Raipalli, half of them speak Marathi, half of them speak Kannada. And when I went there as a child, I remember asking someone which state this was, and they did not know. They didn't know whether they were in Maharashtra or Karnataka. And even now, to think back about it, I think, it's so strange, this idea of borders, right? It divides us even though it doesn't. Like it draws a line even though one doesn't exist. So I think my grandmom came from a space where it didn't matter. She came from a space where there was a merging. So a lot of songs that she heard from her younger days before she got married were mostly Marathi songs. That's when she picked up a lot of Marathi songs. And when she got married and she had come further down into Karnataka, she realized she had to pick up Kannada. So there are few people, it's not just Ajji, right? For me, Ajji is like a PhD. It's not just her, but her set of friends. Like she had this friend called Sharnavaji, and they've beaten boys who have like whistled at them, they would have been walking around looking for cakes of dung to take home. Sagni tagond hogla. So when they'll be taking and someone would have irritated them, they would have chucked it at them. So it's stories like that I felt like these are more interesting to me than what college is trying to teach me in terms of women empowerment. And she would talk about how Sharna Vaji would wait till everyone fell asleep and she'd come out and she'd smoke her BD in peace, because her husband would be out drinking. So I felt these were the stories, and what Ajji did is she brought this world alive that didn't really exist in front of me. It doesn't exist anymore. Even in the villages today, the world that she comes from doesn't exist. There is a mixer grinder, there is internet, there is Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, there's ton of that which did not exist in that space in her head. So I think for me, my grandmom is a way to see this continuum of ideas from where she comes and where I'm going, how she sees everything. Like I remember this funny story. I've said this in a conference. My sister and I were sitting and watching TV. Okay, and we're watching Speed. Have you watched this film with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock?
Yeah.
Bus and it's going to crash, and they're both like thinking, okay, we should at least make love. So they start kissing each other, and my grandmom's sitting next to us, and we're really awkward. We're like, oh my God, what is going to happen? So I'm like flipping the remote, and my grandmom's looking at the screen like she's studying something. So she's sitting at the edge of her chair and she's staring at the screen intently. And we're just like, why is she weirding us out like this? And then very calmly she asks me, why are they eating each other's faces? The realization has come to me in waves over years, yeah. At that point, it was just like a funny thing she said, which just didn't make any sense. We didn't know how to react to it. We're like, what do you mean eating each other's face?
Oh my God.
I was trying to... We forgot about it, yeah. But then again and again, like a year later, maybe I've thought about it. And a year after that, I've thought about it. And it goes to show that, firstly, she's never kissed my grandfather. She doesn't know what the act of kissing is. So then the easiest way to look at it is a very banal way of looking at it is, oh, it's a Western idea. Yeah. That's the most simple, stupidest way to look at it. But then the other thing is that class is associated to intimacy. If you live in a house where there is one room to shit, one room to cook, and one room to sleep, you don't have time to practice foreplay. You don't have time to engage with each other's body as a playfield, but it's functionality. You have to have children. So finally, what you'll end up doing is finding the backyard, middle of the field. So the idea of intimacy is very hurried, you see. Yeah. So I'm thinking also that idea, right? That it's everything that she sees kind of breaks down privilege to me, caste to me, community to me, without her knowing. So just like one line, and it'll be like Rajnikant's line. It'll be like, some major enlightenment is happening, and it takes some time sometimes. So I feel my grandmom is that. She's a time capsule that, touch wood, she lives and breathes next to me, and she reacts to me and my views. Her main problem with all the web series that I've done is like, sleeveless ya khakut? Like, why are you wearing sleeveless? Like you should be. She doesn't have a problem with me wearing shorts, because as women in the field, they wore shorts. I mean, they wore their saris like shorts. It would be just close to their bum, and that's about it. So she has no problem with the politics of the bare leg, but the politics of the bare hand is problematic. Because there's always a blouse. So it's like that. It might be body politics, it might be sexuality, it might be gender. Ajji provides sometimes, even in her own regressive notions that she has lived through, she kind of makes me realize how different that is and how we have to keep progressing, right? My grandchildren or that great grand generation, I'm hoping has it better than me, and you're hoping the same. So it's not, our older generation kind of tends to look away from that. They somehow got education to say all our stuff is superstitious. All our stuff is regressive. It's either you're looking at that leftist ideology of an intellectual, or you're looking at a right fundamentalist. Oh my God, Rama is everything. So there's got to be a middle way, because if you're spiritual and not religious, there is a place for you. Folk has a space.
Folk music has always been, one of the most powerful genres existing in music. At least I want to say that, and I quote, it has been the most ancient form of music known to mankind. But you, as a musician, are trying your best to preserve and archive folk music through your work with your organization, the Urban Folk Project. Can you tell us more about this project?
Okay. I'd like to correct that. I don't think we're trying to preserve it, rather than we're trying to make it accessible like a guitar lesson is.
Wow.
I feel like, for that matter, even more so. It should be as accessible as idli dosa. Like, I'm sure the whole of India you get idli dosa. Like, that's because folk is everywhere. So we're trying to look at how through Urban Folk Project. Okay, I'll tell you why we started Urban Folk Project. I was doing a little bit of theatre in Pondicherry for about 2 years. And one of my teachers, my director, his name is Kumaran Vallavan. He's a French Tamil theatre director. And he was doing a film, he was doing a play about something that deeply moved him, about the Sri Lankan crisis. So the Sinhalese died, the Indians died, Tamil tigers died, there was a ton of death. And his play was talking about how when all of us die, we land up on the same heaven or hell. There is no separate heaven or hell for all of us. And in that heaven or hell or in between limbo, strange space, there is one mother who will wait for you. When you die, she'll receive you. You'll be clueless. You'll be like, where the hell am I? And she'll be like, don't worry, come sleep. I'll give you chai type. So that figure, he said, I want you to draw from a deity you know. And being a Bangalore girl, I think all of the deities that I knew were your Lakshmi, Saraswati, your mainstream deities, who are very beautiful, red sari, lots of gold jewelry. Yeah. So there's something that was not associating with this image of receiving dead bodies, half broken souls, half broken bodies. Then to develop that into a contemporary person. So I think I went back to Yellamma knowing that growing up, I watched Yellamnatta many times. And I found it fascinating because there was no fourth wall. Kuch bhi chala jata tha into the play. Like someone's phone will ring and one actor is missing. So they were like, hey, Chamadagni ko phone karo type. Or for that matter, when my husband and I got married for the first time and we went to Mudbi and the play happened, there is a scene where Renuka is walking in the forest. She's a young teenage girl and all her friends are walking behind her. And they're like, hey, yaring madhyakte, like who will you get married? See, so many pretty boys are here. Why don't you show somebody? So usually Renuka is played by a transgender person. And this transgender person, she was so hot. Like she had like the oomph and she had the face. Yeah. And she just looked at Adi and she's like, that man, I'll marry him. And Adi didn't understand the language, so he was like, what is happening? What did she say? What do you want? And yeah. I didn't want to make it more awkward, so I didn't explain to him. But immediately, the magic of the play is, one of her friends, who was also a man who was toothless and old, but dressed in a sari as a young teenage girl, he's like, yeah, you stupid hoe. The person who paid for the play, no, it's their son-in-law. You can't get married to him. So the wall broke. Renuka appeared in our life. Like she just suddenly became timeless and she appeared. And that's what really fascinated us about this form. And we realized this was not theatre. This was not theatre the way we see in Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai. No, this is not that. this is something that is dying because we don't see the value of it. But as theater artists, when you see it, you're like, man, these guys are doing magic. Like, why can't we make it so easy? Like, we have a proscenium space, we have lights, we have huge soundboards, we have ton of equipment, but the magic that they're creating is so ephemeral, so simple, and it's happening in a snap. And it's just happening because you're present with the story in our time. So the goddess is cursing, she's saying she's swearing more than anybody else in the play, actually. She'll be like, you stupid whore, you stupid. It's constant. And I was like, that is the goddess I want to be with. Because she is just like me. She swears like me, she shits like me, she will throw up like me. And hence, this is the goddess I want to be with. I don't want to be with a goddess who also feels like she's otherizing me.
Yeah.
Like, I am a poor soul, my god is too rich for me. But here there's a god who's made through actors, through the imagination of the community. And we said, that's why we wanted a company. We want a company to be able to record this and experiment with this. Bring folk forms out in a way that we can relate to them, they feel ours, and also that they're making a continuous journey forward. They're not going backward. We are also not, when you say preserve, no, it goes back to understanding that there is an original kind of culture. We have to go adapt it. But I'm trying to do away with that. We don't ask someone, and I've been asked this question many times, how do you feel about appropriating somebody else's forms? No? Yeah. I don't think a kid who learns ballet or learns the guitar gets asked this question. It's, as a rich, privileged person, if you're deciding to do a poor person's form is when you get asked this question. You know, it's plain and simple. It's basically that. And what I'm trying to say is, if you choose to ask the question of appropriation and keep yourself away from a form, how much injustice are you doing to it? By saying, this is not mine. So are you patronizing? Are you being patronizing by not accepting? So it's about not stealing. There is some ethical issues with what we do. I can't just randomly be excited about a form and then bring it to proscenium. There has to be a sort of engagement. I have to work with the artist. I might have to tell him that your Parshurama may be God to you, but he's psycho to me. And have that defect and have that fight, you know, if you have to. So it's a difficult job. It's not easy for someone who would have chosen to be only a documentary filmmaker. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of crying and, oh no, she doesn't love me anymore because I put up a post of her without makeup. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff happens, you know. We are working with Jogatis right now, and we want to work with more groups. But what Urban Folk Project mainly wants to do is go back and have real experiences with the folk and see what is the transferability based on your aesthetic impulses. Like, you see something, like you hear Niza Nizare Bada, you're like, there's something in that which I feel I can imagine, or it's a part of a collective imagination I can draw from. You should be able to do it. You shouldn't have to say, oh, it is this school and this person sang it in this form. But you don't think all those things when you're cooking and you're singing, or you're putting your child to sleep. You just want to be able to sing. So we formed Urban Folk Project also to do that, to get people to freely learn folk. Because folk is not something that you should, I mean, this is my personal opinion. It's not something that you can pay money and learn. You might get a workshop, but if you go to Manjamma, who's a Jogati, who becomes Renuka every morning, her performance starts in the morning when she gets up and she wears a bra. She doesn't have breasts. That bra is her breast. And that touring is her marriage symbol. And that performance you can't get in a workshop. You have to really embody yourself, live with them, have her comb your hair, feel like she's your mother, and then everything kind of just opens up from them. They are the true givers of this art form. So I don't think you can work with folk without working with the people. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, मैं paper पे लिख दूँ, तुम copy करो, तुम गाओ, तो that's not folk. It can't be, because it's not with the people anymore. We're working through machines, and it's another form altogether. It can be folk rock and folk pop and folk something else, but it's it's again, you're looking to push it in another direction.